My ex told our son I abandoned him. I had text messages proving otherwise. My 8-year-old son looked me in the eye during a supervised visit and asked why I left him, and it took me a full minute to understand that he genuinely believed I had. That question is the reason I'm telling this story, because I want other parents going through something similar to know that the version of you your child believes in isn't always the truth, and sometimes the person who controls that narrative isn't you. My name is Daniel Ortiz. I'm 39. My ex-wife, Priscilla, and I divorced 4 years ago, when our son Mateo was 4 years old. The divorce itself was difficult but not especially acrimonious at first. We'd simply grown apart, the way people sometimes do, and we agreed to joint custody. Alternating weeks, both of us committed, at least in those early conversations, to co-parenting without making Mateo carry the weight of our failed marriage. For the first year, that arrangement mostly worked. It wasn't easy, but it was functional. Then Priscilla remarried, to a man named Gregory, and something shifted in the dynamic that I didn't fully understand until much later. Gregory made no secret, in the limited interactions we had, of viewing me as an obstacle to what he considered a cleaner, simpler family structure, one where Mateo had a father figure fully present in the home, and a biological father who existed more as a background detail than an active co-parent. I don't say that to villainize him without complexity. I think, in his mind, he genuinely believed he was building something better for Mateo. But the effect of that belief, translated into actions over the following 2 years, was devastating for my relationship with my son. It started small. Priscilla began finding reasons my scheduled weeks needed to shift. A family trip with Gregory's side, a school event that conveniently always fell during my custody time, an illness that meant Mateo needed to stay in one place during my weeks specifically. I accommodated these requests initially, not wanting to be the difficult co-parent, not realizing I was slowly training myself to accept an eroding version of the custody arrangement we'd originally agreed to. Over 18 months, my actual time with Mateo shrank from an even split to something closer to 1 weekend a month, always through some reasonable-sounding individual explanation that made objecting feel unreasonable in the moment, even as the cumulative pattern became increasingly clear. I want to be honest that I have some responsibility in how this unfolded. I didn't push back hard enough, early enough. I trusted that Priscilla, whatever our marital issues had been, still fundamentally wanted Mateo to have both parents actively present. I was wrong about that, though it took me a long time to fully accept it. The turning point came during a scheduled video call with Mateo when he was 7. I asked him about a birthday party I'd heard about through a mutual friend, one I hadn't been told about or invited to attend, despite falling during what should have been my custody week, according to the original agreement. "Mom said you were too busy with work to come," Mateo said, matter-of-factly, the way kids repeat things adults have told them without any sense that the information might not be accurate. I hadn't been informed of the party at all. I'd been available. Nobody had asked. That was the first moment I understood, with real clarity, that a specific narrative was being constructed around my absence. Not simply logistics shifting due to circumstance, but an actual story being told to my son about who I was and why I wasn't present. A story that positioned my absence as a choice, rather than something being systematically engineered around me. I started keeping documentation after that, which felt uncomfortable and clinical, in a way that ran against everything I wanted my relationship with my son's mother to be, but which became necessary once I understood what was actually happening. I saved every text message where a custody exchange was rescheduled. I saved every email confirming events I hadn't been told about until after they occurred. I saved messages where I explicitly requested more time and was told, variously, that it wasn't a good time or that Mateo needed stability during whatever period was being cited. 8 months ago, Priscilla filed a petition to modify custody, requesting that my visitation be reduced to supervised visits only, citing, among other things, a pattern of what she characterized as voluntary disengagement from Mateo's life, my own reduced time with him, ironically, now being used as evidence that I didn't prioritize the relationship. I hired an attorney, a careful, methodical woman named Rosalind Chen, who reviewed the documentation I'd been keeping and told me something I've held on to since. This is going to come down to the paper trail, she said. Feelings and accusations are hard to litigate. Timestamps aren't. The hearing process took months. Rosalind entered into evidence dozens of text message exchanges spanning nearly 2 years. Every instance where I'd requested time and been declined. Every event I'd been excluded from without notification. Every message where I'd explicitly asked to be included in scheduling decisions and received no meaningful response. Priscilla's attorney argued, predictably, that these were simply normal co-parenting scheduling adjustments, the ordinary friction of two households coordinating a child's life. Rosalind's response was to lay the messages out chronologically, showing the pattern rather than any individual instance, showing how what looked, in isolation, like reasonable scheduling requests amounted cumulatively to a systematic reduction of my access that had never been agreed to or formally modified. The judge, a measured woman who'd clearly seen this dynamic before, asked Priscilla directly during testimony why Mateo had told his father, on multiple documented occasions, that I was too busy or didn't want to come, when the messages showed I had explicitly asked to attend and been declined or not informed. Priscilla's answer that she didn't think it was a big deal to simplify things for Mateo did not land well with a judge who had, by that point, reviewed nearly 2 years of documented pattern. The court ultimately denied Priscilla's petition to reduce my custody to supervised visits, and instead, based on the evidence presented, ordered a restoration of something closer to the original custody arrangement, along with a formal requirement for written notification of any schedule changes going forward, specifically to prevent the kind of informal erosion that had occurred. The ruling helped legally. It didn't undo the damage that had already been done to how Mateo understood our relationship. That supervised visit I mentioned at the start of this story happened during the transition period, before the new custody order fully took effect, when Mateo still carried nearly 2 years of a narrative he'd absorbed as simple fact. "Why did you leave me?" he asked during a supervised visit at a family services center, his voice small in a way that broke something in me I'm not sure has fully healed since. I got down to his eye level. I told him as simply and honestly as I could manage without making him carry the weight of adult conflict he shouldn't have to hold, that I had never left him, that I had asked for more time with him many times, and that I loved him every single day I didn't get to see him. "Mom said," he started. "I know what Mom said," I told him. "I'm not going to tell you she's lying, because that's not your job to sort out. I'm just going to keep showing up every time I'm supposed to so you can see for yourself who's actually here." It's been 6 months since the custody order was restored. Mateo and I are rebuilding something that was never fully broken on my end, but was genuinely broken on his. And rebuilding trust with an 8-year-old, I've learned, requires patience that has nothing to do with legal victories and everything to do with simply, consistently showing up until the pattern speaks for itself, the way the text messages eventually did in that courtroom. What I understand now, in a way I didn't before any of this happened, is that custody battles aren't only fought in courtrooms. Sometimes the real battle is fought in the small, cumulative erosion of 100 individually reasonable-sounding requests. And the only real defense against that kind of erosion is documentation you hope you'll never actually need. If this story affected you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to prove something true using nothing but a paper trail because your word alone wasn't going to be enough? Subscribe for more true stories like this one.